Mark Dubowitz with Charlie Rose, who you've got a man crush on Charlie Rose.
Yeah, a big Charlie Rose fan.
He's gone past, you would sleep with him before Dan Patrick or Bill Simmons or those guys. Dubowitz is the executive director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and you guys know that one of our favorite guests on this program, and a guy that loves me. In fact, he wants a Citizen T-shirt out there in Germany, is our dear friend Ben Weenthal, and I guess he works with Mark in this foundation. In fact, I got to tell Mark something. Mark, good morning, pal. How are you?
Good, Sid. Thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you on. I've got a listener. Her name is Shari, and she's in Virginia, okay? And about 2 months ago, she goes, listen to me. You got to get Dubo on. She calls you Dubo. I guess you guys are tight. I go, okay. She goes, and while you're at it, get that guy John Schanzer, too. So I started doing my homework on you guys, and we're very fortunate to get you today. We're very happy to have you, but you've got fans all over the world, Dubo.
Yes. No. Thank you for that. It's very kind. And please call me Dubo. It's an old nickname.
Is that true? Is that what people do call you?
They do.
Really?
They do. It's a lot of people don't even know my first name.
Is that right? But Charlie Rose didn't call you Dubo.
Charlie and I are not tight yet, but I can tell you and I are tight immediately. So
right off the bat, 46
my good
seconds.
Friends call me Dubo.
That's it. 46 seconds in, we're good buddies. He's Dubo to me. Hey, let's start at the very basic here, because I think a lot of Americans are against this. I'm not exactly sure they know why they're against it. I think they know, on the surface, Iran's going to make a bomb. We're all going to die. They hate Israel, but they don't really know what's inside of this that would scare the living daylights out of them. But from the very simplistic base here, from the beginning, Dubo, this deal, does it really mean that 10 to 15 years from now we are staring at the quote-unquote end of the world?
Sid, it does, and it's even worse, actually. Within 5 years, the Iranians can buy all the heavy weaponry they want when the arms embargo is lifted. In 8 years, they can start to build an ICBM because they can legally buy parts and components for an intercontinental ballistic missile. Within 10 years, they can start installing an unlimited number of centrifuges in their main enrichment facility, and they can lower the breakout time. So the time you get to year 15, they're at near zero breakout, which means they're days away from building a nuclear weapon. Now, they can do all of this legally. All they have to do is comply with the agreement. They don't even have to cheat. If they cheat, they can get there earlier. But that's what's crazy about this agreement. It gives them a patient pathway to a nuclear weapon, an ICBM, heavy weaponry with which to create havoc in the Middle East, even more havoc than they're creating already, and an economy that's going to be increasingly immunized against our ability to use sanctions. So it's a deal that has given Iran everything, an expanding nuclear infrastructure, and it's diminishing our ability over time to peacefully deter them from a nuclear breakout.
And amazingly, I saw this ad campaign. Thank God my cousin, the senator from Minnesota, Norm Coleman, my first cousin, is with Joe Lieberman and Saxby Chambliss and a host of others running ads against this deal. But there was an ad put out a couple of weeks ago, you may have seen it, Mark, which had all these these wretched, horrible Hollywood types, Jack Black and Morgan Freeman, and they talk about, thank God for this deal. It's going to stop Iran from making the bomb. It is obvious they're not doing their homework. Nowhere in this deal does it stop Iran from doing anything. It may lengthen the process, but nowhere in this deal do we stop them from doing anything.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, the president is saying that this deal cuts off the pathways to a nuclear weapon. But if you read the agreement, it doesn't cut them off. It slows them in the beginning, and then it expands them over time. So Iran, as I said, can patiently walk its way into a nuclear weapon. And what's equally outrageous, Sid, is that we just learned yesterday from the Associated Press that the Iranians are going to be able to inspect themselves.
I saw that. That's unreal.
This sounds crazy to you, but there's a military base called Parchin where the Iranians are accused of conducting weaponization experiments over the past number of years. They spent years sanitizing the site, paving over it. And we learned that not only are the weapons inspectors of the IAEA, of the UN International Atomic Energy Agency, not going to be able to get physical access into the site, but the Iranian inspectors are going to be inspecting the sites, taking soil samples, and handing it to the IAEA. So they're going to self-inspect and self-verify, and this creates a dangerous precedent that we're never going to be able to get into Iranian military sites to see what they're doing covertly.
Wow. Now, let's talk about the political side of this, okay? I was in New York a couple of weeks ago when Chuck Schumer actually finally came out and said he's against this deal. So once Chuck did that, there's a bunch of others as well. There seems to be a growing consensus here that this thing will not pass in Congress. I will ask you this. Do you think that it will pass in Congress or not? And if it doesn't, does it matter? Because it seems like Barack Obama is moving forward no matter what.
It's not going to pass in Congress. I mean, already you've got 56 senators who have effectively said they're going to be voting no to this deal. I imagine you're going to see at least 4, 5, 6 more senators, particularly Democratic senators, lining up against this deal. But it doesn't matter. Sid, it doesn't matter how many senators line up against this deal. The president has made it very clear that he's contemptuous of Congress. He's going to circumvent Congress. He has no interest in giving the people that represent the American public an ability to stop this deal, and he is going to move forward with this deal. But the votes matter. They matter because there has to be a serious vote of non-confidence in this deal in order to lay the predicate for the next president to mitigate the damage.
Isn't it funny, too, that a couple of weeks ago there was Obama trying to basically sell us on this deal, and John Kerry the same. And in the same week, Dubo, that John Kerry tried to sell us what a good deal this is, he readily admitted, without provocation, on a national TV show that he hadn't seen the deal, and there's a good chance he'll never see the deal.
Well, that's right. You're referring to these secret side agreements that have been signed between the IAEA and Iran, which is the basis for how they're going to inspect Iran's facilities, including their suspicious sites. And this is amazing that the administration is claiming that they've never seen these secret agreements. They certainly don't want to receive the agreements of the IAEA because then under U.S. law they have to hand over those agreements to Congress. Members of Congress from both sides of the aisle are furious that they're not going to get to see these most important side agreements that govern how Iran's suspicious sites will be inspected and verified. So this is exactly what I was referring to earlier. The fact is that now we're learning through public leaks that one of the elements of the verification and inspection regime will be Iran itself verifying and inspecting its own facilities. And who knows what else is buried in those side agreements? Who knows what other bombs would be going off if we indeed were able to see what has been negotiated with Iran.
I was told by somebody that that is against this deal, obviously, that there's some good news. And again, I haven't seen the agreement, but I was told that paragraph 36, and you know this thing back and forth, Mark, gives either one of us an out, a reason to get out. Now, look, Iran may say, I got $150 billion coming. I don't care. I'm out of here. Or maybe we may get a Republican in office in 2016 that'll say, I'm ripping this thing up. So is there hope here that at least in paragraph 36 that somebody or something can happen to destroy this deal?
Well, it depends on your perspective. I mean, on one hand, that paragraph and other paragraphs give Iran the ability to walk away from the agreement and treat the agreement as null and
void. With money, and get the money at this, which is really unfathomable.
Well, this is right. What the Iranians would do is they would get the money, they get the hundreds of billions of dollars in relief, and then at a time of their choosing, when we try to use sanctions in order to enforce the deal because they're not letting us into a suspicious site, the Iranians will say, well, you're trying to reimpose sanctions on us, we are walking away from the agreement. And I think they would even short of that. They would use what I would call a nuclear snapback, which is they would threaten to walk away from the deal. They would threaten to escalate their nuclear program, and then they would try to convince the Europeans not to join the United States in reimposing sanctions. So they use this threat of nuclear blackmail to essentially neutralize our ability to use pressure to get them to comply. So, I mean, this is another significant flaw of the agreement. It gives them a nuclear snapback, which is a lot more powerful than our economic snapback, our ability to reimpose sanctions.
I will tell you this. If you want to know why this deal is not going to work or a better deal, and I mean this, I just had Ann Coulter on, and I make the argument that if you want to really know about immigration, which obviously is a huge topic here, Mark, you got to buy her book, Adios America. Well, you got to read your column in Foreign Policy, How to Get a Better Deal with Iran, because you will learn exactly what's going on here. Specifically, when you talk about this deal, what alarms you and should alarm everybody very much are those sunset clauses. Explain to the audience what that's all about.
Right. So this is amazing. In the agreement, we've actually negotiated with Iran these arbitrary time limits where after 5 years, or between 5 years and 15 years, restrictions on Iran's nuclear program, ballistic missile program, and access to heavy weaponry will just disappear. And they don't disappear based on Iranian good behavior. They don't disappear if Iran's program is declared to be peaceful. They just arbitrarily disappear. And so over time, with these restrictions going away, Iran is going to be able to expand its nuclear program, its arsenal of heavy weaponry, and develop an intercontinental ballistic missile. And it can do all of that legally and patiently. And these are the sunset clauses that I've called the fatal flaw of this deal.
Also, you talk about in this column that it seems like China, Russia, they seem to be sponsoring this. And with money going back to Iran and maybe even rebuilding their economy, you would not be surprised if all of a sudden Chinese interests, Russian interests, businesses, big-time businesses, start opening up in Iran, yes?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the Chinese, the Russians, and others are going to go flooding back into Iran. But the key for Iran is not China and Russia. The key is Europe. Europe has always been Iran's big economic prize. And so the real question is, will the Europeans go back in? And I think certainly the Europeans are itching to go back in. I think a major vote of disapproval in Congress, where at least, say, 60 U.S. senators vote against this deal, I think will act as a powerful deterrence against those companies rushing back in. They'll be very concerned that with Barack Obama gone in 18 months, they'll be concerned that a new U.S. president with a political tailwind behind his or her back is going to be much more rigorous in enforcing this deal and may decide to walk away from this deal. So the key is to deter the Europeans, to keep them out, and find some political space and time to renegotiate this deal and address some of these fatal flaws that I mentioned. 2
or 3 more. We'll let you run, Dubois. You're doing great, by the way. Really, this is a very important conversation. One, you should be on every show across America. You should be at my daughter's school today, to be quite frank. Tell me what you think the president's motivation is here. Some say he's just impressed by the back of his baseball card. He wants to say, listen, doesn't matter whether it's Cuba, Iran, enemy, not enemy, I'm going to do deals. I promised you deals, I'm doing deals. Some think that he's evil, and there's something, there's a worse agenda here for the president, Barack Obama. What do you think his motivation is to do this horrible deal?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think one is, I like that, the back of his baseball card. I think
Thank you.
Exactly
that was mine.
Right.
Thank you. I gave that to Chuck Todd. Thank you very much. That's mine. You can use it. Just credit me.
I will. It's a great line. And I think that's exactly right. The president's looking for some kind of foreign policy success. His foreign policy has been a disaster. If you look at Russia, you look at Syria, you look at Iraq, you look at Asia Pacific, he's got no victories to even talk about. And so this he considers to be his home run, his Nixon goes to China moment. And this Iran deal is his only opportunity for a positive legacy. I would say the second reason is I think the president really believes that he can economically seduce the mullahs of Iran, that over time, flooding in hundreds of billions of dollars will transform Iran from the leading state sponsor of terror, from a genocide-threatening, nuclear-arming, regionally aggressive regime into a much more moderate and pragmatic one. And he may be right. I mean, there's an off chance maybe that will happen, but my assumption in the Middle East is always it's better to assume the worst and be surprised on the upside than it is to assume the best and be devastated on the downside.
See, I agree with you.
Wrong.
I
We're
agree.
in trouble.
And I think Netanyahu feels the same way. So with that said, if this agreement goes through specifically, do you think Israel takes action before something really happens down the road?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the president is setting up a situation where the Israelis may have no choice, because I think this deal over time is going to make war more likely, not less likely. And when that war comes, Iran will be much stronger and the consequences will be much severe. I don't know how the Israelis are going to be able to tolerate an Iran that emerges over time with near-zero nuclear breakout, easier clandestine sneak-out, an ICBM, which is, by the way, not even pointed at Tel Aviv, that's pointed at the United States of America, but allows this regionally aggressive sponsor of terrorism to emerge as an even more powerful force in the Middle East. I think the Israelis are going to be in a situation, an awful situation, where they're going to have to take military action at some point to forestall an Iranian nuclear breakout.
Mark Dubowitz, the executive director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracy's last one. There seems to be the feeling for this deal is this: you either do the deal, which Obama and Kerry are set to do, or you go to war. There's no middle ground. I find that to be ridiculous. Me personally, I'm not doing a deal with these people. If you want to tighten the sanctions and really put the noose up on the neck, you can do that. Me, I'm okay with force. I would bomb them more. I would even send in some ground troops to be completely realistic, and that's the route that I would go. It doesn't have to be an all-out war. It doesn't have to be a bad deal. There's got to be something in the middle, a better deal. What is your opinion on that?
Sid, 200 times in American history, Congress has rejected a deal by a U.S. president and required that president to amend the deal. This happened during the Cold War with the Soviet Union in arms control agreements when the Soviets had thousands of nuclear-tipped missiles aimed at American cities, a much more dangerous time and a much more dangerous enemy than Iran. 200 times Congress required the administration to amend this deal or amend a deal. This deal can be amended. The sunset clauses can be neutralized. The nuclear snapback can be modified. And by the way, IAEA inspectors can get physical access to suspicious sites, including military sites. Those are 3 amendments that would significantly improve this deal. Congress should reject the deal and require the administration to go back and amend the deal in those 3 areas. I think the fact of the matter is it's not a question of this deal or war. It's this fundamentally flawed deal and war, and the President of the United States should follow precedent, American precedent and American history, and go back and renegotiate a better deal.
Awesome. Dubo, I mean, you just killed it. I know you're a baseball fan, right?
I'm a baseball fan, but I'm a huge hockey fan.
You're even a bigger hockey fan. Okay, so you just went Mark Messier, hat trick. By the way, all 3 goals at even strength after guaranteeing a win for the Stanley Cup Finals. How about that?
I like that. I like that. Thanks, Sid.
You were great. Please come back, okay, buddy? Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Excellent job. Mark Dubowitz is the executive director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and I urge all of you, compel all of you to read his latest column on a better deal, how to get a better deal with Iran. It is in foreign policy.